Hello, this is Professor Gavoor. Welcome to Chapter 1 of our textbook, Flat World Information Systems. In covering this chapter, I guess the first learning objective is, I don't know why we would need to do this, but we have to appreciate how technology has helped bring about radical changes across industries and throughout societies. Well, that's a big no-brainer to me, and probably to you, because in the middle of this pandemic, we've seen that many of us are able to conduct our business, do what we're supposed to do, without actually having to go to the office anymore. Of course, there are some fields where, like warehouses, supermarkets, where workers are essential and have to be there, not only in the hospital, but for a large part, with a pandemic like this, business has not been as crippled as one might think. So business models change rapidly all the time anyway, with or without computers. Computers has helped accelerate that. And it's transforming business environments. I guess in this report in Forbes, something like 72% of the firms are failing at digital transformation. That may be old news. I remember when people were first looking at ERP systems like SAP and Oracle, they weren't prepared for the amount of effort required to do the prep work and then launch one of those things. And there was indeed a lot of failures at that. I have seen companies that have tried to do something that's IT intensive or IT intensively enabled, like sales and operations planning, and have stumbled because they did not do the people part of the process work. It's a socio-technical environment. In other words, it's people and machines working together. Unless you can get them to operate effectively on the same business process, the machine will blindly, repeatedly, without fail, operate to the business process. And if the human beings are operating at one, two, or three other business processes, there's going to be problems. Lots of dollars have fled old media and are pouring into new digital efforts. Well, newspapers. I remember the New York Times. As short as 2005. I used to get the New York Times at home, the weekend edition. And the Sunday paper would be the size of a phone book, an old phone book, maybe 3-4 inches thick. A large part of that was advertising. I get the New York Times now and on a Sunday, and it's really a shadow of its former self, and that's a successful newspaper. The Chicago Tribune is not even doing as well. So I guess the other point they're making here is tech giants, where tech creates new giants. And it's harder, I think, to create new giants moving forward because the existing giants, Facebook and Google, and seem to buy up everybody and increase the size of their footprint. But half of the Fortune 500 companies on the list in 2000 have fallen off. I mean, look at the Dow Jones if you just look at that over time. This was even before IT had a role in such things. Well, I don't know about a decade ago, but social media was not a blip at the turn of the century. And Facebook didn't come on until the early 2000s, I believe. Maybe late 1990s, I don't know. And I think the biggest innovation was a smartphone that made the personal interface with social media so incredibly easy and 24/7-ish in how we do it. I think we give a lot of credit to social media companies, but it's really enabled by the smartphone, I believe. So technology is contributing to a rapid shift in global business power. Well, I was in China and taught there 2 summers in a row about 3 years ago. And it's incredible how much more they use their phones on a daily basis for transactional and purchases than we do here. Um, they pay everything with this phone. I have just started now using my phone to check out of the grocery store because of the pandemic. I don't want to touch my credit card and put it in their device, and so I'd rather just hover the phone over the payment thing. But everybody in China was paying. They were buying, paying. They didn't even have to go to the cash register. They could just, they would be hooked up and linked via internet in a restaurant. You would get the bill, you could say, oh, bring me the bill, and they would scan a QR code and your bill would show up on your phone. You say pay, 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 and you have Alipay, which is part of Alibaba, and boom, it's done. I guess they spent in 2018 $41.3 trillion through mobile payments, and that's 250 times what was spent in the United States. And China has had some really incredible companies that maybe you've never heard of. Have you heard of Alibaba or Tencent? They have really integrated. They're like Google there, and Baidu, which is their search engine. I've had them in my stock portfolio, and they perform very well for me. So if we talk about this tectonic shift, tectonic shift is a kind of shift that happens in the plates of the earth, and it changes the landscape dramatically. India has ridden technology and become a global powerhouse. Many times, if you're looking at the people that you bring in to help you launch a new ERP system or new functionality in the ERP system, half of the ABAP programmers will be Indian laborers that are brought in. They're transient workers. And Tata Consulting Services is the number 2 technology solutions firm, second in size only to IBM. And it's helping other nations develop and infrastructure. If you think about, I was not aware of, until I read this slide, about sub-Saharan Africa utilizing fast, cheap tech as an economic lubricant. I know I'm Armenian by heritage, and the country of Armenia has spent a lot of time growing and becoming kind of a tech hub in the Caucasus, which you would never know about, but it's a significant part of what they do. So if you don't have anything else but you have good education, you can teach people how to code, and people can make money. And if they're good at it and do the right kinds of work, and work can be outsourced from around the world. The programmers don't necessarily have to come here anymore. With the internet being available as it is, if I don't have to go to North Park to teach, I would imagine I could probably hire 10 coders from 3 different countries around the world, and they don't have to be co-located with me to do the work I would want them to do. So in fact here they're even saying that IBM, Microsoft, Google, and others are running R&D centers in several African countries. And it's helping them, as we said, with their economic development and infrastructure growth. 70% of the region's population lives within range of mobile phone coverage. Well, I used to travel the world for business, and the part of the world I traveled the most was Latin America. And I witnessed people not having telephones in their house, but having mobile phones, because they basically did not have a good infrastructure for landlines, but cellular technology leapfrogged that and cost less. So when the technology was available, everybody went from maybe no phone in their house, the poorest people. Of course, the wealthier minority in many of these countries, of course, had telephones. But there's a ubiquitousness, there's a universality of the cell phone. I mean, maybe not everybody has $1,000 cell phone, but you can get a $300 cell phone or a $200 cell phone in a minimal package, and next thing you know, you're texting and you have connection to the internet, and the world is open to you. So it has a unifying universality to it. So the other thing is fast. The computing has become fast and cheaper. The cost of chips, the cost of memory, and we're going to talk about that later when we talk about Moore's law. But as this has changed, we have this idea of the Internet of Things, where the Internet is putting smarts into all kinds of products. I don't have one of those doorbells on my house because I have lots of windows and I can just see who's coming. But when I'm not home, having one of those doorbells would be interesting to see who's at my house or what package was delivered. I mean, I get an email every day with the U.S. Postal Service telling me what's coming in that day's mail, and 90% of the time they're accurate. People have smart refrigerators. You could connect. I know a friend of mine who's more tech savvy and actually a hands-on kind of tech savvy guy, went around and basically changed half the outlets in his house that he can control from his cell phone. I have, when I got new furnaces and air conditioners a couple years ago, I put in Internet of Things and internet-enabled thermostats. We have 2 of them in the house. And I can program them where I could never program my thermostats before because I had to hunch over and look at a screen that was about 1/2 inch by 3 inches and do all the programming. I can now sit down in an easy chair, pull up the app on my phone, and dial in when I want it to turn on and off and at what temperatures. I have an air conditioning or a heating mode that I have all of this for. It's so easy. I laugh at myself because I could be in the Czech Republic, maybe taking a trip when we could take trips. And one night I was there in Prague, and I started laughing. I was like, oh, I could from here turn the heat up or down in my house, turn it up to 90 degrees or down to 50 degrees, and really irritate my wife. I didn't do it, and just the thought of it was enough. But it's kind of amazing that you could actually do that these days. So, how many things do we have that are connected to the internet? My cars are connected to the internet, and it sends a signal to BMW or when something is wrong, and they know ahead of time, or they can just. The computers in my car, if it doesn't communicate with them directly, they can communicate with them the moment I bring it in. They just hook up sensors and read exactly what's been going on. The amount of data that's collected and transmitted is incredible. So everybody in the world, I mean, there's very few people probably that at this time, a smaller and smaller percentage every year that don't have access to telecommunications for sure, and probably computing. I don't think many people, there's probably the ability to have a laptop is probably lagging way behind a cell phone. And cloud computing and software have become a valuable service. For many things, there's an app for that. And cloud computing basically means that you don't own the software. You lease it from the internet. And you access all of that through the internet. If you look at QuickBooks and how Intuit has done it, it went from a ledger system, it went from a checkbook system to a general ledger system, and it became an accounting system. And it grew into an ERP system for small businesses. You can run an entire business, oftentimes from your cell phone. I wouldn't want to do that. I think I get tunnel vision if I'm looking at my cell phone all the time. I have to look at a big screen or a couple big screens. So technologies have fueled globalization. It's made the world incredibly smaller. And we'll talk about that when we talk about shared services. It's redefined the concepts of software and computing and what that means. And it's available to everybody. And it's reduced the costs of a lot of what happens. Because if you think about it, if you've taken an economics course, capital versus labor. Well, by investing in capital, and this kind of capital, technology capital is getting cheaper and cheaper, you need less labor. So, I mean, it's just incredible what you can do with less and less people. It's fueled a lot more data-driven decision making because the data is actually available. And I want to note here, because I'm kind of a stickler on this, the difference between data and information can be a big leap. There's lots of data, lots of bits and bytes and information floating around the world. I mean, they tell you that I think the terabytes of data that's generated by a jet engine on an airplane on a flight from New York to Chicago. I mean, they have sensors, again, the Internet of Things, where it collects gobs and gobs of real-time data so that they can look and analyze and take all of this mountains of data. In fact, a note to myself, I have a presentation on the proliferation of data that's already videotaped. I probably should pop it up here so that you can look at it. But how do you take these mountain ranges, not just a mountain of data, but a mountain range of data, and turn it into useful information? Well, that's why big data and analytics are such an important field these days. And it's raised, obviously, because of the Internet of Things. It's not as secure an environment as people want it to be. It's in many cases porous. And so we have a lot of privacy and security concerns. I mean, if you never see your money and it's just numbers on a file in a bank, those numbers and files can be siphoned off by someone else. And it happens now and then. Yeah, but we're going to cover data security as well. So the next section here, we're going to talk about the firms across the hardware and software and internet businesses that were founded by young people. This is a young people's business. And here's a picture, I guess, of what's his name, Bill Gates, getting arrested in Albuquerque, New Mexico for who knows what. He looks like he's about 16 years old. But it's important. I mean, look what he did. He was an undergraduate when he left Harvard to found Microsoft. Michael Dell was a sophomore. I remember when he was like such a, on the cover of so many, Time and Newsweek and Business Week and, Wired magazine and all that, because as a sophomore he started building computers at the University of Texas in Austin and created the entire Dell industry about it. It's just crazy. Mark Zuckerberg, if you want to watch the movie Social Network, it kind of outlines their rise from, again, a Harvard student to multi-billionaire. There's plenty of movies and books on Steve Jobs. He was 21 when he founded Apple, and Sergey Brin and Larry Page, 20-something doctoral students at Stanford when they founded Google. Other people, Kevin Systrom, 26 when he founded Instagram. and then Instagram was bought by Facebook, which is hilarious because I can't. The number of younger people that tell me, "Well, I don't use Facebook anymore. That's what my parents use." Well, yeah, I use it. I'm like a parent because I prefer Instagram, which probably a lot of you do, and maybe that's even becoming passe at this point. But funny enough is that Instagram is owned by Facebook. WhatsApp, which is a tremendous, when you have FaceTime and all the functionality you have on an iPhone, WhatsApp makes that same FaceTime and texting functionality available across any platform. Evan Spiegel dropped out of college to focus on Snapchat, which is, I'm not sure what that has morphed into or not into. Twitter, we certainly know about because of our outgoing president. Oh, excuse me. Stephen Chen and Chad Hurley launched YouTube, which was bought by Google. I love YouTube. I lose hours on it. Jeff Bezos, of course, founded Amazon. I think he graduated from business school and drove out to Seattle. His wife did most of the driving, and he sat there with a notebook and outlined the business he was going to start to sell books on this new thing called the internet. Jen Hyman and Jenny Fleiss are 20s in grad school when they launched Rent the Runway. Okay, I want to be naive here and say I have no idea what that is. And maybe you rent, I guess it's a renting high fashion clothes. I could probably look it up. And Payal Kadakia was when she created something called Class Pass, which again, I'm not familiar with. In the next section, we want to talk about the degree to which technology has permeated every management discipline. My view, and the reason I get to teach this class, is in my working environment. I worked in consumer goods for the last 16, 17 years of my career, and I was involved in implementing SAP in the Latin America division at Colgate-Palmolive. And then I was also the business side lead for the improvement of SAP usage and functionality. And then we launched 3 more modules, and so I kind of became experienced in this. I don't know how good I was. So it's permeated every management discipline. And, tech careers are varied, and it applies to almost any. You could say you could be a tech expert in any given functional field in business, or you could just be a tech expert. You could be a systems expert. And even within that, there's so many different kinds of things. When we think about data analysis and big data analysis, now there's data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, and they all mean different things. So tech is everywhere. They're saying geek it up. I don't know to geek it up or not geek it up. It's just, it's such an indispensable part of business. So it's become a key differentiator for job seeker. I guess, I don't know. Our students get jobs and we don't even have computer science. We have one course in undergraduate, and we only started that 2 years ago at my assistance. And we had this graduate course, which you're seeing the 3rd iteration since I've been teaching it for a couple of years. And computing is getting faster and cheaper and being used more and more places. And all modern managerial disciplines have been impacted. Let's take a little survey of this. Well, finance. It's suited to, IPO markets. It's suited to mergers and acquisitions. People are collecting data, running spreadsheets, doing business plans, and they have access to all the information that's available for the companies that are thinking, one company acquiring another, 2 companies that are thinking about merging, if they're doing initial public offerings. All of that information can be gathered. and run without having to actually visit places to do so. So it has the power to make certain pieces of capital obsolete, like offices right now. And the role of finance and tech includes lending to tech firms, evaluating the role of technology in firms in an investment portfolio, but also being able to do what I remember when I first started working in 1976 at the Ford Motor Company. We used to do a budget, and I was in warranty analysis, so we had to do a warranty kind of budget. And we had these big Frieden calculators with paper tape that were printed on, and we would go through and have assumptions, and there'd be paper, rolled up paper everywhere, and you couldn't iterate it very often. When we moved to mainframe a little bit, I created tables, arrays they called them, and then I was doing it, and my boss wanted to make changes. Well, finally, I did some programming. He said, "What do you want the bottom line to be? I'm giving you what I think is an accurate estimate." And he said, "I'd like the bottom line to be this." And I figured all my programming had been wrong. It went the wrong way. I went and kind of did some reverse engineering, put another subroutine in that said, if the bottom line has to be this, how do we proportionately take everything up or down to make that bottom line work, keeping the relative value of everything to each other the same, the ratios. And, it was a kind of a preliminary spreadsheet. Now with, if you build a financial model, you could do all kinds of what ifs that would have taken weeks that you can do in probably half a day. You want to change this? Let's change that. What if we do this? What if we do that? And it's so easy that tech is so important in finance. Equally important in accounting. I'll give you an example. Every quarter when I first started working, it took a good 3 weeks into the next quarter to close the books and give the quarterly report. So if the quarter closed, like recently, the end of last year closed in December, and now it's January 17th, we still, in the old days, we probably still wouldn't have had the closing. And if it was a year-end closing, we probably wouldn't get it till early February, maybe February 15th. Well, as ERP systems took over, the closing became less laborious because the accounting was so much more accurate and at everyone's fingertips. You can be 2 days into the next quarter and close the books on the previous quarter. You might not announce it for a couple more days to the public, but inside in the company, you can close a quarter in 1 day, 2 days now, where it used to take 20 days before. So, and many major accounting firms have spawned tech-focused consulting practices because they know that if you increase the value, the capital invested in technology, you can reduce the amount of labor, getting back to that economics example. And you can still cook the books, but the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and combination with technology make that harder to do. So it raises the executive and board responsibilities and ties criminal penalties to certain accounting and financial violations. And if I can see your books and you can see your books and I'm the SEC, and if I can have access to some of that stuff, if I'm suspecting you and you can't say no, they're inside your system, and it's harder to cheat. You can't have 2 sets of books. Maybe you can. Marketing. Well, marketing has changed so much because of this. You can track customers, analyze campaign results, modify tactics. You can see who's buying what demographic. If you're Frito-Lay, you know because you know how your salty snacks products are selling, which ones sell more. In the northern and northeast, pretzels are bigger sellers than they are in the south. Pork rinds are bigger sellers in the south than they are in the rest of the country. They know very well what their sales are and when their peak times are and which holidays and which kinds of products sell. And they're forecasting because it is so much probably more accurate because of the vast amounts of real-time data that they have. And their product has to be prepared and kind of sold quickly to make it fresh. So they have a tremendous advantage with a good information system. When Walmart became the largest retailer in the United States in the 90s, the key to their success was their IT system. The leaders in Bentonville could come in, and this was before any other company in the country could do that, or probably even the world, could come in any morning and know what the sales were in various departments at any store in the Walmart network instantaneously. And that was a big deal. So when you have that kind of information, you can use apps and develop location-based messages and services. You can have cashless payments. You can use social media to generate sales and improve reputations, better serve customers. I can make appointments online for service of this or that without leaving, and it's almost painless. The CRM systems you have for customer relationship management, which we'll even talk about that, and we may even have a case study in that. It's really important. So you have search engine marketing, optimization, customer relationship management, as I just talked about. You can have personalization systems. I mean, look at how Amazon markets to me. And I go on there and they know what I've bought. They make suggestions. Oh, yeah, I could buy that. And it's not stupid suggestions like, let's say, here's an example. I'll probably use it many times. I was looking for an electric mandolin, of all things. So I started doing an internet search and seeing who had what and this and that. And I bought a Fender electric mandolin several years ago. Well, after I bought it, every time I logged into Facebook, I was getting ads for like 3 weeks on electric mandolins. I'm like, okay, I'm so glad you're smart enough to know I was searching for such a product. Why aren't you smart enough to know that I actually bought one and probably was not going to buy another one? So there's smart search engine optimization and personalization of things, and there's like really stupid things. If you look at your ability the ease of making a purchase on Amazon versus many other websites, I almost don't want to use websites that aren't Amazon because they're just not as easy to navigate. They're wonky. Every time I order, sometimes when I have guest speakers, I order pens from Cross, and I look at their deep discount, warehouse sale, their outlet, and every time I order, I have to call the 800 number and talk to a person because I can't navigate the closure of the order. It's really dumb. Joseph A. Banks, I used to buy some clothes from them. And at first, they were really tedious to try to I'm trying to spend money, and, it's wonky. Amazon, nothing like that, very smooth. It's a great customer interface. Operations, which is my bailiwick. I mean, the start of ERP systems was something called MRP2, which is Materials Resource Planning. What do I need to build? What materials do I need to build it? What do I have in inventory? What do I have on order? What more do I need to order? When is all this stuff coming in so I can plan when I'm going to do my building? And it's a giant moving spreadsheet that every hour, every day, it changes that you got to keep track of. When I was working at Rockwell Automotive, in the first half of my career was automotive, second half was consumer products. I outlined for the company I was working for, we didn't have the ability to do it, but I said we needed an information system so that we could manage all the track the quality of everything. We didn't have the ability, we didn't have the hardware or software. We have to build the software, but we didn't have the hardware to be able to do this. And we didn't have, this, you can't just be entering numbers all the time. You'll enter, 10, 20% of it wrong if people are entering the numbers themselves. You need readers, you need automation, and we're there now, where we have all of this stuff. Factory automation, which is all run by programmable controllers. And you could redesign the business process and the manufacturing process around and using kind of the central nervous system of the IT system. Where do you put stuff in a warehouse? You have a warehouse the size of a football field. Well, you could lose stuff in a warehouse if you have a paper-based storage system. But with a warehouse management system that's operated, with an active internet in the entire facility and barcodes and barcode readers, well, your inventory accuracy numbers just go sky high, and your utilization of your warehouse is improved, and it's just incredible what can happen and how many less people you need to manage the darn thing. Human resources, all the information, that's a very resource information and data intensive function that technology has helped. The recruiting has moved online. There's a lot of issues, I think, with recruiting online, but you could be at your house and apply for 30 jobs before lunch if you wanted. You have your resume, you upload it, you could change your resume to match that. You upload it, you can write a cover letter for each company, and just edit, change, and next thing you know, emphasize certain keywords and other, de-emphasize other keywords depending on the job you're looking at. So it's really easy to do it. It's kind of a one-way street though, because a lot of times I think, and almost this is where you almost need some legal support. During the Great Recession, that's when I made the transition, and it was a 4 or 5 year transition from, hey, I'm a corporate executive, to now I'm a college professor. And the years in between were kind of dismal. And when I was, you had like, I don't know, a couple million people that looked like me applying for 2 jobs that were available for directors and VPs of supply chain. So it was really a hard system. And when you applied with these systems, these portals, which were everywhere, it was like a black hole. You never had any feedback. Now, I think I haven't done that for a while, but I think now, thank you we've logged your thing. You should hear back from us by a certain date. And I think companies should be obligated to reply so that people know. We saw your resume. Thank you for your interest, but we're moving in a different direction, or we're not going to consider you for this position. Thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. We need that kind of thing. But also, all the information that you have, your medical records, your insurance, what level of benefits you have, All that stuff has to be tracked. The law. My son is an attorney with the Department of Justice. He was telling me that, the paralegals don't necessarily have to be. I think the U.S. government probably has U.S. government employees doing their paralegals, but a lot of private firms will use paralegals or people that do their casework and writing and document organization and gathering. We'll go to third world countries like India and maybe those sub-Saharan African places where they can have people do really good work at a fraction of what it would cost them to have it done here. So, whether you're doing patents, they're talking about claims at home and abroad, proprietary methods and content and all that. But even the outsourcing of some of the base work that lawyers do, kind of the grunt work, can be done because of this information agent. Well, of course, if you're looking at systems, you can have a career in it now. If you go to the 60s, you had some computer geeks in the back that probably did something and they became more and more important. There's not a major corporation in the world without a C-level chief technology officer, chief information officer, maybe both. Maybe a chief information security officer has become such an important thing. That is as IT and IS, information technology, information systems, has proliferated, so has the elevation and number of executive positions. So in our little last section here, we'll understand the structure of this text and the issues and examples that will be introduced and why they're important. So if, the more tech savvy you can become, and let's assume I'm not a computer person, but I almost played one on TV, or at least I was involved. I was not putting finger at a keyboard and coding, even though early in my career I did some basic and Fortran programming. That shows you how old I am. But the intersection, the interface of business and technology, this socio-technical interface, has to be developed. You need the critical thinking skills specific to technology. And part of that skills, which I think the book will probably miss, is a skill from another aspect of my life. My first half of my career was in quality management, is business processes, business process improvement. A lot of the reason technology fails is that business process that is in the IT side of things is hardwired, if you will. The system, the code will always do the same thing kind of in the same way every time. And if human beings think it operates somewhat differently, well, then they will think this darn thing doesn't work. They won't do the proper data management. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when the data is bad that the darn thing, in fact, doesn't work. You've got to stay abreast and evaluate and be able to embrace new technologies as they come into your functional field. And as a manager, you want to find out and be tech savvy enough so that the tech people, remember, one of the key reasons things fail also is you let the tech people take the lead. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do. It has to be a business lead with tech enablement. Tech is really important, but it's number two to the business objectives that you're trying to solve. So those not trained to evaluate and make decisions risk being irrelevant, marginalized, or experience failure because they let everything go to the tech people. And that brings us to the end of this presentation of Chapter 1. Thank you for your attention.